Alright, today's video is on section 6.4. This is going to be day 1. We're still dealing with vectors. We're going to be talking about dot products. We're going to be talking about orthogonal vectors. We're going to talk about some properties of dot products. And then if there's time for this video, we'll talk about the angle between two vectors. So when we talk about a dot product, basically we're talking about doing an operation like addition or subtraction or multiplication or division, but we're doing it with vectors. So let's start with the definition. Definition of dot product. Alright, so given vector u is going to be u1 comma u2 and v is v1 comma v2 the dot product u dot v, notice that looks like a big multiplication sign, is going to be equal to u1 v1 plus u2 v2. So notice we're multiplying the two x components and we're multiplying the two y components, and then we're simply going to add them up. So if you're thinking ahead, the answer to a dot product will be a number. Okay, I'll figure out how to spell. So let's put a couple exclamation points there. So we're simply going to get a number, and in class we'll talk about what this number represents. We'll look at some real-life examples of using dot products to calculate things, but for now we're just going to talk about the process, how to find a dot product. We'll have a little bit of practice with that. Alright, let's take a look at a couple of examples of dot product. So our directions here, example, find the dot product for each pair of vectors. Sorry about the writing, it's a little hard to write over here on my graphics tablet. So for part A, we're going to have vector S is 2 comma 5 and vector T is negative 4 and 6. So if we're following our formula that we wrote, we have, let's try that again. We have S dot T is going to be equal to, we're going to take our x components right over here and multiply those. So I've got 2 times negative 4, and then we're going to add that to our y components over there, 5 and 6. 5 times 6. So I get negative 8 plus 30, which is going to give us 22. So it's kind of like multiplying vectors. It's not exactly like that, but you could think of it kind of like that. So when we multiply these two vectors, when we get the dot product, we're simply going to get a number. In this case, it's 22. Let's take a look at another example. Part B. Let's say we have V is 3i minus 8j, and w is I plus 7j. So if you want, what I would recommend is that you pause the video and see if you can figure this out on your own. If you don't think you're ready yet, just go ahead and follow. Now, I did mention in class that I usually like to work with vectors in component form, so I'm just going to change each of these to component form. So I've got 3, -8 for this one, and I've got 1, 7 for vector w, and then to find, having a little trouble here, v dot w, again I'm going to take my x components and multiply those, so I have 3 times 1. I'm going to add to that my y components over here. I have -8 and 7, so I've got 3 minus 56, which is -53. So if you did pause the video, how did you do? Hopefully you did alright. And if you have any questions, make sure that you ask me the next time I see you in class. Alright, so moving on to our next topic for this video. Let's get a new page. We're going to talk about the angle between two vectors. So angle between two vectors. So let's take a look at a little graph. And I'm going to put a vector over here. We're going to call this v. And I'm going to put another vector over here. I'm going to call this u. Now each one of these has their own direction angle. So for v, my direction angle is over here. This is going to be theta sub v. And for my u, this is going to be my direction angle. That's going to be theta sub u. So we really have 3 different angles that we're looking at. I have the direction angle for v, I have the direction angle for u, but then I also have the angle between these two vectors. Okay, we're going to call this theta. So we are going to let theta be the angle between the two vectors. Alright, so some of you might be thinking ahead and thinking, okay, if I find the direction angle for u and I find the direction angle for v and I just subtract those, then I can get the angle between the vectors. And for most of the time that will work. But if we use a little trig, and I'm not going to go through the derivation of this formula in this video, but if we use a little trig, we can come up with a formula for theta, where theta is going to be the cosine inverse of the dot product of our two vectors divided by the magnitude of u times the magnitude of v. Alright, and this one straightforward formula is going to give us the angle between these two vectors. We know how to do the dot product. We know how to find the magnitude of each vector. So we've got basically a couple different steps here. 1, find the dot product. 2, find the magnitude of each. Divide all that stuff, and then find the cosine inverse. So let's take a look at an example. Keep that formula right up at the top. So let's find the angle between the vectors. Alright, so part A, we might do a part B, we'll see. Let's say we have u is equal to -5, 7, and v is equal to 2, 4. Alright, so here's my formula up here. We need the dot product, so let's do that. So I have u dot v is going to be negative 5 times 2, multiply the x components, plus 7 times 4, so that's going to be negative 10 plus 28, or 18. So that's u dot v. We also need the magnitude of u, so that's going to be the square root of negative 5 squared plus 7 squared. So in order to save some time here, we'll figure that all out. That's the square root of 74. And we need the magnitude of v. So that's going to be the square root of 2 squared plus 4 squared. So that's going to be the square root of 20. And really there's no need to simplify these. So I'm going to take all this and I'll plug it into my formula. So I've got theta is equal to the cosine inverse of u dot v, which we figured out was 18, divided by the magnitude of u, which was square root of 74, divided by square root of 20, alright, substitute all that into your calculator, take the cosine inverse, and if all goes according to plan, you're going to get 62.1 degrees. So if we made a little sketch here, just a quick little sketch, I've got negative 5,7, which is going to be somewhere around here. So this is u, and v is 2,4, so somewhere about here. So this angle between these two vectors, that theta, is going to be 62.1 degrees. Alright, so that's all for this video. If you have any questions, maybe it's write them down in your notes that you took, and you can ask them tomorrow in class. And we'll do a little bit more practicing in class. Feel free to go back and rewind and revisit if something didn't make sense to you. And we'll see you in class.